Welcome. I'm just so thrilled you were joining us today.
Yeah, it's a really exciting link.
It really is, because we are embarking on a truly fascinating deep dive. If you've ever felt like the rules of wealth and success,
Or even just basic financial stability.
exactly. If you feel like those things are somehow hidden behind this curtain of complex jargon, today is going to be incredibly refreshing.
Absolutely.
Our mission today is straightforward, but, well, it's profound. We are going to extract the foundational, timeless principles of wealth building.
And we have a really unique way of doing that today.
We do. We are looking at a massive stack of notes, research, and analysis based on a classic text. It's from 1926.
Right, it's a century ago almost.
Yeah, it's called The Richest Man in Babylon by George S. Clason. And specifically, we're pulling from the unabridged 2022 Ixia Press republication.
Which is fantastic, by the way.
It is. Now, I know what you might be thinking. You hear financial manual from a century ago.
You're bracing for the worst.
Right. You're thinking dry charts, confusing equations, just a whole lot of dense economic theory.
But that is the beauty of this source material.
Exactly. It is entirely built on vivid, story-driven parables set thousands of years ago in ancient Babylon.
It's basically a shortcut to being deeply well-informed about the success secrets of the ancients.
Delivered through these amazing tales of, chariot builders and camel traders and scribes.
It's so approachable.
It really is. Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really grasp why these lessons hit so hard, we have to understand the world they are set in.
That is the perfect place to start.
Because the setting itself is a lesson in economics.
Right. To ground you in the reality of these stories, we have to look at the geographical and historical context of Babylon itself.
Which surprised me, honestly.
It surprises most people, because it completely reorients how we view the wealth described in the text.
What's fascinating here is what we usually picture.
Yeah, when we picture Babylon, we imagine this pinnacle of ancient wealth, a city of unimaginable splendor.
Hanging gardens, massive walls.
Endless gold. We assume it must have been situated on a gold mine or something.
Or surrounded by lush natural resources.
Right. But the geographical reality is quite the opposite. Babylon was not naturally wealthy.
Not at all.
It was situated in a flat, arid valley beside the Euphrates River.
Basically a desert.
Exactly. It had absolutely no natural forests for timber. It had no mines for stone, let alone precious metals.
Which is crazy for a major city.
It didn't even have sufficient rainfall to raise crops. Everything that made Babylon wealthy, every single brick and every stalk of grain,
Was man-made.
it was entirely man-made.
It is such a wild concept when you really think about it. We are talking about a glittering jewel of a city built essentially in a dust bowl.
Defying all the odds.
It completely defies the logic of where you would expect a major economic hub to spring up.
It does. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it mirrors the very principles of personal wealth we're about to explore.
How so?
Well, over 8,000 years ago, Babylonian engineers pulled off some of the first massive engineering feats in human history.
Right, the canals.
Yes, they diverted the waters of the Euphrates using immense irrigation canals, turning a barren desert into a fertile agricultural paradise.
Which is mind-blowing for that time.
They were the first mathematicians, the first financiers. They were the first people to use a written language on clay tablets to record business transactions.
They invented the spreadsheet.
Basically, they literally engineered their environment to create prosperity from absolutely nothing.
And that physical world building is just the perfect metaphor for the financial lessons contained in the text.
Exactly. Wealth, according to the Babylonians, is engineered.
It is engineered.
It is not something you stumble upon like a lucky pearl in a river. It is built brick by brick, canal by canal, habit by habit.
I really want to linger on that framing for a second for you listening right now. Wealth is engineered, not stumbled upon.
It's a powerful shift in perspective.
It feels incredibly empowering, but also, a little daunting. Sure.
Because it puts the responsibility entirely on the individual.
It removes the excuse of bad luck.
Right. And that leads us perfectly into the very first story from our sources. It deals with exactly that realization.
The crushing weight of realizing you haven't been building those canals for yourself.
Yes. We meet two characters right out of the gate. There's Bansir, who is a chariot builder.
And his best friend, Cobby.
Cobby, the musician.
Yeah.
And the text paints this incredibly relatable picture of frustration. You have Bansir sitting on the low wall surrounding his property.
Sweating in the sun.
Sweating in the merciless, hot, tropical sun of the Euphrates Valley. He's looking at his unfinished chariot, and he's just
Completely demoralized.
totally demoralized.
You have to picture the severe contrast of his environment here.
Paint that picture for us.
Behind his simple, modest home, he can see the high terraced walls of the king's palace
Towering over him.
and the painted tower of the Temple of Bel. He is surrounded by this dazzling engineered wealth of Babylon.
Just mocking him almost. Right. He watches the noisy chariots of the rich, jostling tradesmen in the streets. He sees the long lines of sweating slaves carrying water from the river.
Just to keep the hanging gardens green.
Exactly. He is quite literally in the shadow of extreme wealth, participating in the economy that sustains it, yet he feels entirely disconnected from the benefits of that economy.
And here comes Kabi, holding his lyre, and Kabi asks to borrow a measly 2 shekels.
A tiny amount.
And Bansir has to admit his purse is completely empty. He doesn't even have 2 shekels.
Which triggers a massive venting session.
It really does. Bansir has this specific agonizing grievance. He says, look, we have worked hard our entire lives.
We aren't lazy.
Right. He says, from dawn until dusk, I build the finest chariots and you play the most beautiful music. Yet here we are.
Eating porridge and sour goat's milk.
Living in the absolute richest city in the known world. Why can't we have our just share of the good things?
It's a profound moment of awakening, and it is a frustration that echoes so loudly in modern society.
Oh, absolutely.
Bansir tells Kabi about a dream he had, a dream where his purse was heavy with coins, where he could buy finery for his wife and toss coppers to beggars without fear of tomorrow.
But waking up
to his empty purse forces him to ask, what is the matter with us?
Yeah.
Are we just dumb sheep?
Yeah, it raises an important question that many people still ask today. Why does hard work alone not equal wealth?
We are conditioned to believe that.
We really are. If you just put your head down and grind, financial security will naturally follow. That's the lie.
Bansir and Kabi are the ultimate proof that this equation is fundamentally flawed.
I want to push back on that a little bit, or at least play devil's advocate for the listener who might be feeling defensive right now.
Go for it.
If hard work isn't the key, what is? Because a lot of people listening are putting in 50, 60 hours a week. Are we saying their labor is useless?
Not useless, no,
Right.
but insufficient on its own.
Okay.
And the turning point in their conversation addresses this brilliantly. They realize something fundamental. They have never actually sought wealth.
What do you mean?
Bansir sought to build the best chariots. Kabi sought to be a master of the lyre. And they succeeded at those specific technical goals.
Right, they're master craftsmen.
But they never studied the mechanics of acquiring gold. They assumed the byproduct of being a good chariot builder was wealth, rather than realizing that building wealth is a completely separate skill set from building chariots.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So they mastered their craft, but they were financially illiterate.
Exactly.
So they decide to stop feeling sorry for themselves. They go ask their childhood friend, Arkad.
The richest man in Babylon.
Right. And they figure, since they all started from the exact same place, played in the same streets, sat under the same teachers.
Arkad must know a secret they don't.
Exactly.
When they gather a group of friends and approach Arkad, he doesn't sugarcoat his response.
He gives it to them straight.
He confirms their suspicion. He says if they haven't acquired more than a bare existence after a lifetime of hard work, it is because they either failed to learn the laws of wealth or they simply do not observe them.
Wow. Brutal, but honest.
And then Arkad shares his own backstory, which is crucial to understanding his philosophy.
Because he wasn't born rich.
Not at all. He didn't inherit estates. He was a humble scribe, working long, grueling hours in the Hall of Records, carving clay tablets.
Which sounds miserable.
It was backbreaking, tedious work. And despite his diligence, he had absolutely nothing to show for it at the end of the month.
The source material is so vivid here, I can almost smell the burning wick of the oil lamp in this scene.
It paints a great picture.
Arkad tells them about a time when Algamish, a very wealthy and demanding moneylender, ordered a copy of the 9th law.
And he needed it fast.
He needed it in 2 days, but the law was incredibly long, the clay was difficult to work with, and Arkad just couldn't finish it in time.
So Algamish comes back.
Algamish comes back and is absolutely furious, but Arkad, showing some serious grit, makes a bold proposition.
He takes a risk.
He says, Algamish, tell me how I may become rich, and I will carve all night long, and by sunrise the tablets will be complete.
It's a brilliant trait.
Right. Labor for specialized knowledge.
Arkad works through the night. His back is aching, his head is pounding from the smell of the wick, his eyes are straining in the dim light.
Oh, he gets it done.
When the sun comes up, the tablets are done. And true to his word, Algamish delivers the secret.
And it is a single core principle that changes Arkad's life forever.
Algamish looks at him and says, I found the road to wealth when I decided that a part of all I earned was mine to keep. And so will you.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because Arkad has the exact same reaction most people would have today.
He pushes back.
He pushes back hard. He says, but all I earn is mine to keep, is it not?
And Algamish just laughs at him.
He calls him a fool.
He points out the painful reality of the working class. He says, do you not pay the garment maker? Do you not pay the sandal maker?
Do you not pay for your food?
Right. You pay everybody in Babylon except yourself.
Which means
you are essentially a slave, working for what society gives you to eat and wear.
What's fascinating here is the psychological shift Algamish is demanding.
He's differentiating between spending your earnings and keeping your earnings.
Right. He tells Arkad that he must pay himself first.
Specifically, not less than 1/10 of his total earnings.
10%.
10%. He says that wealth, like a tree, grows from a tiny seed. That first copper you save is the seed. And the sooner you plant it, the sooner the tree will grow.
But let me jump in here, because I know what you listening might be thinking. This sounds great in a vacuum.
The math is easy on paper.
Right. But what if you literally cannot afford to save 10%? What if rent and groceries take up 95% of your income?
It's a very common reality.
Is this text ignoring the reality of poverty?
No.
Because telling someone who is drowning to just save a tenth feels a bit detached from reality.
It's a very fair critique. And it's one the text actually addresses later on when we get into debt management.
We will definitely get there.
But to your point about the psychological barrier, Algamish's argument is that the I can't afford it mindset is an illusion.
An illusion.
Yes. An illusion created by prioritizing external payments over internal wealth building.
Okay.
He isn't saying it's easy. He's saying it requires a forceful, non-negotiable reordering of priorities. If your taxes went up by 10% tomorrow, you would find a way to survive.
You'd have to.
Algamish is saying you must tax yourself first. It is an aggressive act of financial self-preservation. You are prioritizing your future self over your current creditors and vendors.
That makes sense. It's a mindset shift from being a conduit for money to being a reservoir for it.
Exactly.
So Arkad tries it. For a whole year, he dutifully hides away 1/10 of his earnings.
And like all of us who try investing for the first time,
He makes a massive rookie mistake.
he really does. When Algamish returns a year later to check on his progress, Arkad proudly announces he saved his 10th.
He did the hard part.
But when Algamish asks what he did with it, Arkad reveals he gave all his savings to Asmur,
The brickmaker.
the brickmaker. Asmur was traveling across the sea to Tyre and promised to buy rare Phoenician jewels for Arkad.
Oh.
The plan was to sell them in Babylon and split the profits.
And Algamish just groans. He says, every fool must learn, but why trust the knowledge of a brickmaker about jewels?
Would you go to the bread maker to inquire about the stars?
Exactly. And of course, the Phoenicians were scoundrels who sold the poor brickmaker worthless bits of glass.
Arkad lost his entire year's savings.
The takeaway here is foundational for anyone looking to invest.
Algamish tells him, if you want advice about jewels, go to the jewel merchant. If you want to know about sheep, go to the herdsman.
Advice is freely given.
And often confidently given by people with no actual expertise. But you must ensure you only take what is worth having. Never take advice from a brickmaker about jewels.
In a modern context, this is the equivalent of taking stock tips from your dentist.
Or investing your life savings into a cryptocurrency just because a celebrity endorsed it on social media.
Right? You must seek out those whose daily work gives them true, verifiable expertise. Otherwise, you pay for their inexperienced opinions with your own hard-earned capital.
It's a brutal but necessary lesson.
Arkad loses everything, but his unyielding determination keeps him going. He starts saving his 10th all over again, and this time he applies the wisdom.
And this brings us to a massive section of our sources, the blueprint.
Yes, because Arkad's success doesn't go unnoticed by the highest powers in the land. He is eventually called upon to codify his knowledge.
Right. If we move forward in the timeline, we find King Sargon returning to Babylon after defeating his enemies.
But he comes home to a mess.
A severe domestic economic crisis. The royal chancellor reports that the laborers are unemployed, merchants have no customers, and the people have no gold to buy food.
The economy has stalled.
The king is confused.
Yeah.
He asks where all the gold went that was spent on building the great canals and temples.
And the chancellor's answer is so telling.
The chancellor explains it filtered through the fingers of the working class and accumulated in the hands of a few very rich men who actually understood how to keep it.
And King Sargon, being a visionary, decides he wants all his citizens to be prosperous.
He realizes you can't have a strong empire if the middle class is completely hollowed out.
Right. He asks who the best person to teach wealth building is, and obviously it's Arkad.
So the king commands Arkad to teach a masterclass.
A class of 100 chosen men in the Great Hall of the Temple of Learning. And Arkad delivers what he calls the 7 cures for a lean purse.
These are the core mechanics.
Let's really take our time and break down each of these 7 cures because they map so perfectly onto modern life.
Let's start with cure 1. Start thy purse to fattening.
Okay.
Arkad stands before this diverse group of men, scribes, butchers, egg merchants, and he points out that their trades are streams of gold flowing into their hands.
And he uses this brilliant, simple analogy with egg merchant.
He says, if you put 10 eggs into a basket every morning, but only take out 9 eggs every evening, what eventually happens?
The basket overflows.
The basket overflows.
I love the egg basket analogy. It is so remarkably simple. Arkad tells the class that for every 10 coins they earn, they must take out only 9 to spend.
But here is the fascinating paradox from the text.
Yeah, Arkad points this out, and I want your take on this. He says living on 9/10 of your income feels absolutely no different than living on 10/10.
He says he managed to get along just as well.
How is that mathematically possible?
It sounds counterintuitive, but it aligns perfectly with modern behavioral economics, specifically a concept adjacent to Parkinson's law.
Which is?
Parkinson's law states that work expands to fill the time allotted for its completion.
Ah, right. If you have an hour, it takes an hour.
Exactly. And in finance, we see a similar phenomenon.
Why?
Expenses inevitably rise to meet income.
Okay, so if you have 10 coins?
Your lifestyle will naturally expand to consume 10 coins. If you force your environment to only allow 9 coins, your lifestyle will contract imperceptibly to fit 9 coins.
You trim the absolute least valuable 10% of your spending without even noticing it.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Furthermore, Arkad notes a strange psychological benefit. When he respected his money enough to keep a portion of it, more coins seemed to come to him easily.
It builds a mindset of abundance rather than scarcity.
Which leads directly into Cure 2, which addresses the immediate objection every single person has when told to save 10%.
The classic objection.
The class asks Arkad, how can a man keep 1/10 of what he earns when 100% of his earnings isn't even enough to cover his necessary expenses?
We brought this up earlier.
We did, and Arkad's response is a masterclass in challenging our own biases. Cure 2 is, control thy expenditures.
He makes a razor-sharp distinction between necessary expenses and desires.
This is perhaps the most critical distinction in personal finance. Arkad tells the men, what each of us calls our necessary expenses will always grow to equal our incomes unless we protest to the contrary.
He is defining lifestyle creep thousands of years before the term was invented.
He absolutely is.
Yeah.
As your income goes up, the quality of your clothes, the richness of your food, the size of your home,
The car you drive.
all these things subtly upgrade until you are back to living paycheck to paycheck, just at a higher tax bracket.
I want to read this exact quote from the source because it is so poetic and true. He says, desires grow like weeds in a field wherever the farmer leaves space for their roots.
It's a great image.
You will always have more desires than your earnings can gratify. And in today's world of targeted algorithms, one-click purchasing, and social media influencers.
Those weeds are being fertilized on an industrial scale.
Exactly. Therefore, the cure is the budget.
You must budget your necessary expenses so that you can have what is essential, pay for a few worthwhile enjoyments, and still not touch that protected 1/10.
Now, some people view a budget as a restriction.
Oh, definitely.
One of Arkad's students protests, saying a budget makes him feel like a pack-ass carrying a heavy burden.
But Arkad reframes it. A budget is a bright light in a dark cave. It shows you the leaks in your purse.
It is not a prison.
It is your best defense mechanism to protect your growing wealth from your own casual, fleeting wishes. It allows you to consciously direct your money rather than wondering where it went.
Okay, so we saved the money, and we've plugged the leaks with a budget.
Which brings us to Cure 3.
Make the gold multiply. Because just leaving your coins in a purse is gratifying, but it earns absolutely nothing.
It just sits there losing value to inflation.
Or whatever the Babylonian equivalent of inflation was. Your wealth isn't the coins in your wallet. It's the income stream you build that continually flows into your purse, whether you are working, sleeping, or traveling.
And Arkad shares the incredible story of the farmer. to illustrate compound interest.
It is a stunning example of mathematical power.
A farmer has a newborn son. He takes 10 pieces of silver to a moneylender and leaves it on rental for the boy.
And what's the agreement?
The agreement is that the interest is 1/4 of its value every 4 years.
Okay.
And crucially, the farmer asks that the interest be added to the principal.
The magic of compounding.
By the time the son is 20, the 10 pieces have grown to over 30, but the son doesn't touch it.
He lets it ride.
When the son turns 50, the moneylender pays him 167 pieces of silver.
Wow. In 50 years, the investment multiplied itself almost 17 times.
That is the essence of Cure 3.
Arkad uses this phrase. He says, every coin is a slave that must work, and its children must work, and its children's children must work.
Now, the language of slaves is very rooted in the ancient setting.
Of course. But the modern equivalent is thinking of every dollar as an employee in your personal corporation.
That's a great modern translation.
If you spend that dollar on a coffee, you've fired the employee. If you invested in an index fund, you've sent that employee out into the market to recruit more employees.
You are building an engine of capital that operates independently of your physical labor. But of course, putting your money to work comes with danger.
Which leads to Cure 4. Guard thy treasures from loss.
This is where a lot of people get tripped up.
They really do. Arkad reminds the class of his disastrous first investment with the brickmaker. He states very clearly the first sound principle of investment is security for your principal.
It is incredibly tempting to be lured by the promise of massive, rapid earnings.
But the penalty of risk is probable loss.
We see this constantly today. The temptation of high yields is intoxicating.
People see a new tech stock.
Or a volatile cryptocurrency. Or a real estate flip promising 40% returns in a month, and they abandon all caution.
Arkad is advising against this entirely.
Before you part with your treasure, you must be thoroughly assured it can be safely reclaimed. He urges the class to consult with wise men.
To secure the advice of those who actually have daily experience in the profitable handling of gold.
Boring, steady wealth generation is almost always superior to the wild swings of speculative gambling.
Do not trust your own romantic desires to make wealth rapidly.
Better a little caution than a great regret.
We'll hear that exact phrase again later, and it's so true. Let's move to Cure 5. Make of thy dwelling a profitable investment.
Arkad points out that paying exorbitant rent to exacting landlords for spaces that don't bring joy to the family is a drain on resources and spirit.
He strongly advocates for owning your own home. Having a garden where your children can play in clean earth and your wife can grow herbs and figs.
There are huge psychological and financial benefits outlined here. Arkad argues that once you pay off the moneylender who helped you build the house, your cost of living drops dramatically.
Freeing up more of your income for pleasures.
It puts confidence in your heart and greater effort behind all your endeavors.
Now, I have to step in here and challenge this.
I knew you would.
Because this is probably the most debated piece of financial advice in the modern era. Arkad says to buy a house.
Right.
But we live in a world with 7% mortgage rates, massive property taxes, maintenance costs, and highly transient careers where people move cities every 5 years.
The rent versus buy debate is fierce.
It is. Does Arkad's advice hold up, or is this a relic of an ancient agrarian society?
It's an excellent point of friction. From a pure, optimized mathematical standpoint, renting and investing the difference in a high-yield index fund can sometimes outperform homeownership in today's market.
Especially over a short time horizon.
Right. However, Arkad is tapping into something beyond pure math.
Forced savings.
Forced savings and psychological equity. A mortgage forces you to build equity every single month. It is a highly illiquid asset, which means it protects your wealth from your own impulsive spending habits.
You can't easily sell a bedroom to buy a sports car.
Exactly. Furthermore, the psychological stability of owning your dwelling, the permanence of it, often translates into better performance in your career and a deeper rooting in your community.
So Arkad isn't necessarily wrong.
But modern listeners must weigh the transaction costs of modern real estate against the psychological benefits he describes.
That is a very nuanced way to look at it. It's not just about the spreadsheet, it's about human behavior.
Which naturally progresses to Cure 6.
Ensure a future income. Arkad tells the class they must look ahead to the days when they are no longer young, and to provide for their families should the gods call them prematurely.
This is essentially the ancient blueprint for retirement planning and life insurance.
He talks about buying houses or lands that will hold value.
Or making regular small deposits with a moneylender over many years to build a massive surplus for old age.
He even predicts the concept of life insurance.
He does, wishing for a system where many men pay a trifling sum regularly to create a fortune for the family of any member who passes.
Remember, there were no social safety nets in Babylon.
No pensions, no social security.
If you couldn't work, you starved. Or you relied on the charity of your children.
The principle remains vital today. You must pre-plan for your vulnerable years.
And finally, Cure 7, which is arguably the most empowering. Increase thy ability to earn.
Arkad shifts from talking about the mechanics of gold to talking about the human being sitting in front of him.
He tells the story of a young man who came to him asking for a loan because his income wasn't enough.
Arkad told him he was a terrible risk for a loan because he had no surplus earning capacity.
When Arkad asked what the young man was doing to increase his earnings, what did the guy say?
The young man said he had asked his boss for a raise 6 times in 2 months.
Arkad smiles at the young man's simplicity, but notes he had the right foundational desire. He wanted more.
However, general desires are weak. To simply wish to be rich is useless. To desire 5 specific pieces of gold is a tangible, actionable goal.
Arkad uses his own history again. When he was a humble scribe, he noticed that other workers were carving more tablets and getting paid more.
Instead of complaining that the system was rigged or begging his master for unearned coin, he decided to exceed them.
He took more interest in his work, improved his concentration, and applied relentless persistence.
And soon he was carving more tablets than anyone, and the financial rewards followed naturally without him having to beg his master for a raise.
Cure 7 is about cultivating your own human capital. It's about studying your craft, becoming wiser and more skillful.
Whether you are an artisan in ancient Babylon, a software engineer, or a freelance writer today.
Seeking greater skill allows you to serve your patrons better, which inevitably increases your earning power.
We spend so much time obsessing over getting a 6% return on our investments, when upgrading our own skills could yield a 50% increase in our baseline salary.
These 7 cures. Save 10%, budget your expenses, multiply your wealth, guard against loss, own your home, ensure your future, and increase your earning ability. They form a complete, self-sustaining financial ecosystem.
They are the mechanics of wealth. But as any financial advisor will tell you, understanding the math is only half the battle.
What's the other half?
The other half is navigating the complex psychology of success, risk, and opportunity.
Which leads us into the philosophical debates held in the Temple of Learning.
Right, let's explore that psychological shift. Our sources take us right into the Temple of Learning, this ancient hub where men of all classes met to debate ideas.
And one evening, a cloth weaver stands up and says he found a purse full of gold that day.
He feels very lucky.
And he poses a question to the room. Can luck be enticed? Can we attract the goddess of good luck?
It's a universal human desire. We all want to be lucky. We look at successful people and often attribute their wealth to being in the right place at the right time.
Arkad is leading the discussion, and he asks the room where they should look for this goddess.
Naturally, a young man suggests the gaming tables.
The casino.
That is where men court favor, hoping the dice roll red instead of blue. But Arkad and the group quickly, and mathematically, debunk this idea of easy luck.
Yeah, Arkad points out that the odds at the gaming tables are mathematically rigged in favor of the gamekeeper.
You might win occasionally.
But over time, the gamekeeper takes 1/5 of all coins wagered. Arkad challenges the room to name a single successful, wealthy citizen of Babylon who built their fortunes starting from the gaming tables.
The room is dead silent.
Yeah.
True success never starts there.
Someone else brings up the horse races, specifically betting on the gray horses of Nineveh.
But Arkad again points out that this is an area where men lose more than they win. He suggests that the goddess of good luck is a goddess of dignity who rewards honest effort.
Therefore, they shouldn't be looking for her at the casino.
They should examine their trades, their businesses, and the opportunities they've encountered. And this prompts an elderly merchant to share a painful story of a missed opportunity.
This story is so agonizingly relatable. I think we've all lived some version of it.
Tell us about it.
The elderly merchant tells the group about his youth. His father's friend's son had this brilliant idea. He found a barren tract of land high above the canal.
The land was useless because water couldn't reach it.
Exactly. But this young innovator wanted to build massive, ox-powered water wheels to lift the water, irrigate the land, and then sell the fertile plots to city residents for herb gardens.
It was a massive infrastructure play.
The young innovator didn't have the capital, so he needed 12 investors to each pledge 1/10 of their earnings to fund the project until it paid off.
The merchant's father begs him to invest. He warns his son not to make the same mistakes he did, not to delay building wealth.
But the young merchant hesitates.
He and his wife really wanted to buy these beautiful, rich new robes that had just arrived from the East.
If they committed to investing their 10th, they'd have to sacrifice that immediate luxury. They'd have to wait for the robes.
So he delayed his decision. He suffered from present bias, valuing the immediate reward of the robes over the future, larger reward of the investment.
By the time he decided to act, the investment pool closed, and the water wheel project went on to be massively, incredibly profitable.
He missed out on a fortune for a fancy robe.
It's the ancient equivalent of passing up early equity in a promising startup because you wanted to buy a new car.
And another man in the crowd, a buyer of animals, shares a similar story of paralysis.
He had been looking for camels for 10 days with no luck. He arrives back at the city gates after dark, and the gates are locked for the night.
An old farmer approaches him in the dark. The farmer has a flock of 900 sheep, but his wife is desperately ill with a fever, and he needs to sell the entire flock immediately to rush back to her.
The farmer offers the sheep at an incredibly low, desperate price. The buyer knows it's the deal of a century.
He agrees, but because it's dark and the sheep are milling around, they can't accurately count them.
The farmer begs him to just pay 2/3 of the money that night so he can leave, promising his educated slave will help finish the count in the morning to settle the balance.
But the buyer is stubborn. He refuses to hand over the gold until daylight, paralyzed by the minor risk of a miscount despite the overwhelming margin of safety in the price.
And what happens? The sun comes up, the city gates open, and 4 other buyers rush out. The city is threatened with a siege, food is suddenly scarce, and those competing buyers pay the old farmer almost 3 times the price.
The stubborn buyer lost the deal of a lifetime because he delayed action. He overanalyzed the situation and let a minor logistical hurdle blind him to the massive opportunity.
This is where a Syrian man in the crowd jumps up. He's listened to these stories and he struggles to find the right word in his limited vocabulary, but finally he yells out, "Procrastinator!"
He identifies the common thread. Good luck presented itself to both the merchant and the buyer in the form of a clear opportunity, but the spirit of procrastination caused them to hesitate.
Exactly. Arkad synthesizes the whole debate beautifully. He realizes that luck is merely the byproduct of recognizing and acting on an opportunity.
The goddess of good luck doesn't just hand you a bag of gold, she hands you an opportunity.
And she heavily favors men of action. If you hesitate, if you let your desires for temporary luxury or your stubbornness slow you down, the opportunity vanishes.
To entice good luck, you must aggressively accept opportunity when it presents itself.
This psychological readiness for action is critical, but it must be balanced with intense caution when it comes to managing the wealth you do acquire.
Action without wisdom is just recklessness.
This brings us to a crucial phase of the text, the mechanics of risk and debt management. Because acquiring gold is one thing, keeping it from slipping through your fingers or avoiding the trap of crushing debt requires a completely different set of skills.
We get a really powerful transition into this through the 5 laws of gold.
We get a quick summary from a character named Kalabab, who tells the tale of Arkad's son, Nomasir. Arkad didn't just hand his massive fortune to his son.
That would violate everything he believes about wealth being engineered.
Instead, he gave Nomasir a bag of gold and a clay tablet with the 5 laws of gold carved into it, and told him to go out into the world for 10 years to prove himself.
Nomasir lost all the gold almost immediately because he trusted tricksters, invested in businesses he didn't understand, and made bad bets.
But when he hit rock bottom, stripped of his unearned wealth, Nomasir finally read the clay tablet.
He learned that wisdom is vastly more valuable than raw gold. The 5 laws essentially codify everything we've discussed so far. Saving a 10th, making it work, seeking wise advice, avoiding unfamiliar investments, and fleeing from the promise of impossible rapid earnings.
Nomasir uses these laws to rebuild his wealth from scratch, and returns 10 years later to hand his father 3 bags of gold in exchange for the wisdom of the tablet.
It proves the central thesis. If you have gold but no wisdom, you will lose the gold. But if you have wisdom and no gold, you can acquire all the gold you need.
But let's look at what happens when someone acquires a sudden windfall of gold and is immediately faced with complex social pressures. Let's talk about Rodan, the spearmaker.
Rodan has a totally different problem than anyone else we've met.
He just received a massive, life-changing gift of 50 gold pieces from the king for designing a brilliant new spear point, and suddenly, everyone in his life wants a piece of it.
Rodan is overwhelmed. His sister is begging him to lend the gold to her husband so he can become a wealthy merchant.
Rodan wants to help his family, of course, but he's terrified of losing his newfound wealth. He knows how hard it is to come by.
So he goes to Mathon, the gold lender of Babylon, for advice. Mathon is thrilled because, as he says, people always come to him for gold to pay for their follies, but rarely do they come for advice on how to keep it.
Mathon tells Rodan a fable that is just absolute gold, no pun intended. It's the analogy of the ox and the ass, and it is entirely about setting boundaries.
The ox is complaining to the ass about how hard he has to work, pulling the plow all day from sunup to sundown, while the ass just carries the master occasionally and gets to eat green grass in the shade.
The ass, wanting to be a good friend, tells the ox to pretend to be sick the next morning so he can get a much-needed day of rest.
The ox takes the advice and plays sick, but the farmer still needs the field plowed. The work doesn't disappear just because the ox is resting.
So what does the farmer do?
He hitches the ass to the plow instead.
Oh no.
The ass spends the entire grueling day doing the ox's back-breaking work. When night falls, the ox is grateful, but the ass is bitter, exhausted, and his shoulders are chafed and bleeding.
The friendship ends right there in the barn.
And Mathon delivers the devastating moral. If thou desire to help thy friend, do so in a way that will not bring thy friend's burdens upon thyself.
I mean, wow. How many of us need to hear that today? Whether it's co-signing a loan for a cousin with terrible credit, or lending your life savings to a sibling to start a restaurant when they've never worked in food service.
We do it out of love, but we end up taking on their burdens and destroying the relationship when it inevitably fails.
Rodan realizes that if he gives his 50 pieces of gold to his brother-in-law, who has zero experience as a merchant and no capital of his own, he isn't helping him. He's just taking on the burden of his brother-in-law's impending failure.
To drive the point home, Mathon opens his token chest.
Explain the token chest.
This token chest is essentially Mathon's ancient risk assessment database. Every time he lends gold, he takes a physical token from the borrower to keep in the chest until the loan is repaid.
He pulls out various tokens and explains his lending philosophy, categorizing loans into 3 distinct types of risk.
The safest loans are based on property. The borrower leaves jewels or pledges land or camels that exceed the value of the loan. If they default, Mathon sells the property and recovers his gold without sweat.
This is the ancient equivalent of a secured loan.
The second tier is loans based on human earning capacity. Mathon holds a token from a hardworking farmer or a tradesman who has a steady income and an honorable reputation in the city.
If they suffer no major misfortune, they have the capacity to repay. It's riskier, but manageable.
But then he throws a carved turquoise beetle on the floor with absolute contempt. It belongs to a young man from Egypt who borrowed to chase romantic, impossible wealth and failed. Now the young man says he can't repay because ill fate pursues him.
Mathon explains that lending to those with neither property nor assured earning capacity, driven only by emotional ambition, is a guaranteed path to sorrow.
He warns Rodan that youth is ambitious and often seeks shortcuts to wealth, not realizing that hopeless debt is a deep pit of sorrow.
He advises Rodan to keep his 50 pieces of gold safe. Better a little caution than a great regret.
If the brother-in-law truly wants to be a merchant, he should work as an assistant first, save his own money, and prove his capability before risking 50 years' worth of a spearmaker's savings.
It's incredible how practical and unsentimental this advice is. It removes the guilt from saying no to family by framing it as an objective assessment of risk.
And speaking of debt being a deep pit of sorrow, our sources do something really cool here to prove how timeless this is. The narrative jumps forward thousands of years to 1934.
We get to read a series of letters from a Professor Alfred H. Shrewsbury at St. Swithing's College in Nottingham. He is an archaeologist who is translating newly excavated clay tablets from Babylon.
And these tablets were written by a man named Bansir, the camel trader.
This is a phenomenal inclusion in the text. Professor Shrewsbury and his wife are drowning in debt in the 1930s. They are terrified of their local merchants, humiliated by their landlord, and constantly taking out new credit to pay old credit.
It's a vicious, paralyzing cycle that is destroying their peace of mind and their marriage.
But as the professor translates Dabasir's tablets, he discovers that Dabasir was once in the exact same position, and the tablets contain an exact mathematical formula to escape the crushing weight of debt.
We call it the 107-20 rule. Dabasir was once a slave in Syria because he ran away from his debts in Babylon and fell in with robbers.
When he finally resolved to face his enemies, which he realized were actually his debts, and returned to Babylon to restore his honor, his mentor Mathan gave him this precise formula.
Dabasir engraved it on the clay tablets. Step 1, 10% of all you earn is yours to keep. You still pay yourself first, even when you're in debt.
That feels wrong, right?
Yeah.
You owe people money, why are you keeping some?
But Dabasir explains, it builds your confidence, it gives you a tiny bit of security, and it starts building your future estate so you aren't perpetually at zero.
Exactly. Step 2, 70% of your income is allocated to your living expenses, housing, food, clothing. You must rigidly budget to ensure your life fits within this 70%. You cannot borrow more to live.
And step 3, the remaining 20% is divided pro rata, evenly and consistently among all your creditors.
Dabasir went to his creditors, admitted his faults, and presented this mathematically sound plan. Most of them accepted it, preferring a steady, guaranteed repayment over chasing a man who had nothing.
Let me stop you there, because the term pro rata gets thrown around in finance a lot. But how does that actually work in practice for someone listening who might be looking at, say, 5 different credit card bills?
Good point. Does that mean paying the highest interest one first, or splitting it evenly based on the total balance?
That's a great question. In the context of Dabasir's ancient formula, pro rata means dividing that 20% of your income proportionally among the people you owe based on the size of the debt.
So if your total debt is $10,000, and you owe $5,000 to creditor A and $1,000 to creditor B. Creditor A gets 50% of whatever your repayment pool is that month, and creditor B gets 10%.
You aren't playing favorites. You are showing every single person you owe that they are receiving a mathematically fair slice of your available surplus every single month.
Modern debt strategies like the debt snowball or debt avalanche advocate focusing on smallest balances or highest interest rates first, which is mathematically optimal today.
But Dabasir's pro rata method was about managing the psychology of the creditors, keeping them all at bay by proving consistent, fair intent to repay everyone simultaneously.
Okay, that clarifies it perfectly. So Professor Shrewsbury applies this 5,000-year-old formula in 1934. He and his wife take their list of debts to the local merchants and the landlord. They present the 20% pro rata plan.
And instead of yelling at them, the tradespeople are actually supportive.
The greengrocer basically tells them, look, if you pay in cash for what you buy today and you pay a little bit consistently on the back account, that's better than you've done in 3 years.
The psychological relief the professor experiences is palpable in his letters to his colleague. By adhering strictly to the 70% living budget, allocating 20% to systematically dissolve the debts, and finding the sheer joy of jingling that saved 10% in his pocket, he fundamentally changes his life.
He transforms his relationship with money from one of terror, shame, and avoidance to one of control, transparency, and accumulation. It is the math of freedom.
The math of freedom. That is such a powerful phrase. But this math of freedom requires immense discipline, and more importantly, it requires a willingness to actually do the hard work necessary to generate that 100% income in the first place.
Which brings us to our final core topic, the dignity and power of work. Because none of these formulas matter if you despise the mechanism that generates your income. If you view work merely as an inescapable punishment, building wealth becomes an exercise in misery.
This final narrative drives that point home beautifully, and it offers a stark reframing of labor. We are introduced to Shahrunada, a wealthy, highly respected merchant prince of Babylon, riding at the head of his massive caravan.
Beside him is a young man named Hadan Gula, who is dripping in gaudy jewels, complaining about the desert heat, and generally acting terribly entitled. Hadan Gula is the grandson of Shahrunada's former partner, Arkad Gula.
Shahrunada is deeply disturbed because Hadan Gula has been raised in luxury and explicitly states his belief that work was made for slaves.
Hadan Gula just wants to live like a prince and spend shekels as fast as they come. He thinks his grandfather's wealth just materialized out of thin air, or that his bloodline makes him superior to labor.
Shahrunada realizes he needs to shatter this young man's toxic illusion before it destroys the family fortune. He points to some old men plowing a field and says he remembers them plowing that same field 40 years ago when he passed by in a slave line.
Hadan Gula is shocked. Sharunada reveals a massive secret. He, this wealthy merchant prince, was once a slave. And even more shocking to the young man, his revered, highly successful grandfather, Arkad Gula, was also a slave.
The contrast drawn in this section between the physical reality of the Wall of Babylon and the mindset of the worker is staggering. Sharunada describes marching toward Babylon in chains after his brother murdered his friend, forcing Sharunada to be sold to pay the blood money.
As he approaches the city, he sees the massive walls being built. He sees thousands of slaves carrying heavy baskets of bricks up steep trails under the brutal crack of bullock whips. Those who fall from exhaustion are simply pushed aside down the embankment to die.
It is a horrific, terrifying picture of what happens to those who are broken by the system, who fail to find a better path in the slave market.
But Sharunada is chained next to a farmer named Megiddo, and Megiddo has this incredibly resilient, almost stoic philosophy. While other slaves plot to shirk their duties, pretend to be sick, or fight the guards, which only leads to more beatings, Megiddo says, "Work, well done, does good to the man who does it. It makes him a better man."
Megiddo believes work is his best friend because it is the only thing he has left to offer that can dictate his value. And Sharunada takes this to heart. When they get to the slave market, Sharunada doesn't act like a defeated victim. He eagerly pitches himself to a fat, good-natured baker named Nananade.
His proactivity saves his life. By presenting himself as an eager, willing worker, he avoids being sent to the death sentence of the wall builders, and instead secures a good master. He learns to bake bread and then honey cakes. But he doesn't stop at just being a good slave. He pitches a profit-sharing model to his master.
This is early entrepreneurship. He asks if he can spend his afternoons peddling extra honey cakes in the streets, splitting the profits. Nananade agrees, and Sharunada begins earning his own pennies, actively working toward buying his freedom.
I want to pause here. I can hear some people rolling their eyes thinking this sounds like hustle culture propaganda. Is the text really suggesting that if you just work hard for your exploitative boss, everything will magically work out? Isn't that a dangerous narrative?
It's a vital question. The text isn't advocating for mindless, exploited grinding. It's advocating for leveraging work to gain autonomy. Sharunada wasn't working hard to make Nananade richer. He was working hard to learn a skill, baking and sales, and to generate a surplus that he could use to buy his own freedom.
Work, in this context, is the vehicle for escape. It is the engine of skill acquisition. If you view your job merely as trading hours for a subsistence wage, you remain a slave to it. If you view your work as a training ground where you are being paid to learn skills that will eventually serve your own enterprises, work becomes your friend.
That distinction is crucial. It's about agency. And it is precisely this entrepreneurial spirit, this dedication to work as a tool for agency, that catches the eye of a rug merchant who frequently buys his honey cakes. That rug merchant is Arkad Gula, the grandfather of the spoiled young man listening to the story.
Arkad Gula is also a slave at this time, acting in partnership with his master. Arkad Gula is deeply impressed by Sharunada's enterprise. Eventually, through a series of misfortunes involving his master's gambling debts, Sharunada's comfortable setup is destroyed, and he is sent to the grueling, deadly work of excavating the Grand Canal.
It is at the Grand Canal, amidst the unbearable heat, the terrible food, the beatings, and the sickness, that Sharunada's spirit almost breaks. He wonders if the slackers or the fighters had it right. But he holds on to Megiddo's philosophy. He keeps working, refusing to let the environment destroy his internal standard.
And eventually, Arkad Gula, who has bought his own freedom using the very work ethic they discussed, tracks Sharunada down, buys him from his cruel master, and immediately breaks his clay title, freeing him. Arkad Gula makes Sharunada his partner because he values the man's unyielding work ethic above all else. He knows that a man who works that hard when he has nothing will be an unstoppable partner when he has capital.
It's an incredibly moving moment in the text. Sharunada turns to the young Hadan Gula and says, "Work, in the time of my greatest distress, did prove to be my best friend." The young man finally understands the gravity of his family's history. He realizes that his grandfather's secret key to the golden shekels wasn't magic, it wasn't a noble bloodline, and it wasn't blind luck. It was a profound, almost sacred respect for work.
The segment ends with this powerful image of Hadan Gula humbly stripping off his gaudy rings and earrings, choosing to honor his grandfather's true legacy by adopting a posture of hard work rather than leaning on unearned luxury. So bringing this all together, what does this massive journey mean for you?
If we synthesize the vast ground we've covered today, the core message is that the laws of wealth are fundamentally akin to the laws of gravity. They are universal, and they are unchanging. Whether you are Arkad, the scribe carving tablets 6,000 years ago, Professor Shrewsbury battling debt in 1930s England, or the listener navigating the complex, algorithm-driven economy of today, these principles govern the acquisition and retention of wealth.
You must pay yourself a tenth of your earnings first to build your capital seed. You must budget ruthlessly to control the creeping weeds of your desires. You must make your money work through compound interest and guard it fiercely against the allure of unrealistic risks.
You have to beware the ox and the ass. Do not take on the financial burdens of your friends or family in a way that destroys your own stability, no matter how much you love them. If you are in debt, you don't hide. You use the 107-30-20 mathematical plan as your roadmap to freedom.
You have to recognize that the goddess of good luck only visits those who actively step up to opportunities instead of procrastinating. And perhaps most importantly, you must reframe your relationship with work. It is not a punishment. It is the very vehicle for your autonomy, your skill building, and your self-respect.
I want to leave you with a final concept to mull over, building on everything we've discussed. We talked at the very beginning of this deep dive about how Babylon's immense glittering wealth was entirely man-made. It was the result of brilliant systems, deep canals, and massive walls constructed in a barren, unforgiving desert.
But the text notes a haunting historical reality. When those human systems were eventually abandoned centuries later, when the canals were no longer cleared and the walls were no longer guarded, the great city of Babylon crumbled back into the desert dust, disappearing completely under the sand.
If personal wealth and stability are exactly like the city of Babylon, requiring daily, deliberate systems, budgets, and habits to keep the desert of poverty at bay, what happens the moment we abandon our own financial architecture? What part of your inner Babylon is currently unprotected, just waiting for the shifting sands to reclaim it?
That is a phenomenal, albeit slightly terrifying question to leave you with. Take a hard look at your own financial walls and canals this week. Are you actively building them, or are you letting the sand blow in? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into The Richest Man in Babylon. We hope you walk away with a heavier purse and a much clearer mind. Until next time, take care and keep building.